Dr. Faraz Harsini. He's the founder and CEO of Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, ASAP, a nonprofit which mentors and supports animal advocates, especially student organizations, to effectively advocate for human and non-human animals alike. Faraz's extensive background as a biomedical student in pharmaceutical companies, involvement in clinical trials, as well as cancer and inflammation research, makes him a very effective advocate for alternatives to animal testing. I've seen that firsthand. Dr. Harsini has a doctorate in biomedical sciences, focusing on cell physiology and molecular biophysics. He turned down a postdoctoral opportunity at MIT to work in a biotech company to advance clinical research, which of course means research with human beings, human relevant. He has received numerous awards and recognitions for his scientific and animal advocacy contributions, including an award from NIH. Just as impressively, he was also awarded the PETA Campus Representative of the Year during his doctoral studies. Dr. Harsini is also an organizer for Anonymous for the Voiceless in Austin and works on cultivated meat as a senior scientist at GFI. So please welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. First of all, I want to say PETA is amazing, and more than that, Elka, I'm proud to be her friend and colleague, and she is one of the most badass activists that I know. Alrighty, so this is me as a baby, look like a potato. I'm from Iran, I'm born and raised until I was 22. I did my undergrad in chemical engineering there, then moved to the US, did my master's and doctorate here. And right now I'm a bioprocessing senior scientist at GFI, so my boss is sitting here, stakes are high. I'm an organizer for Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I have a nonprofit called Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, so come and check it out. So during my undergrad, I watched this movie. Have you watched this movie, Patch Adams, by any chance? So I was very inspired with what he did, going to hospitals. He's an American doctor who went to hospitals and played for kids. And that's exactly what I started to do. It's called clinic clowning. So I was very shy, but I was also a musician, so I went to hospitals. And doing that, I was exposed to, like, firsthand to patients suffering from cancer, especially children. And that's exactly why I switched my degree from chemical engineering to biomedical sciences. So in my current role, well, before joining GFI, that is, I work in pharmaceutical companies. I work on drug development, infectious diseases, cancer, inflammation. And I worked on FDA, submission of new drugs to FDA and running clinical and preclinical research. So what I want to do with this presentation is there's a big misconception that not testing on animals means that we are putting patients in danger. And by the end of this conversation, I want to show you that this is actually completely opposite. And in fact, by testing on animals, we are holding back science and we are putting patients in danger. So Carl Sagan says that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I say extraordinary suffering requires extraordinary justification. Let's look at the suffering and see how extraordinary it is, and then see if there is any justification for it. So this is what we do to you. So when we're trying to show you what animal experimentation looks like, we show you happy animals, you know, like kind of happy monkeys. They're petting the monkey, oh, how cute. Somehow there is always a mouse sitting on test tubes, as mice do. But what I want to do here is I want you to really feel like what it's like to be in place of these animals. So think about the last time you just had a common cold, how miserable you were. Think about a child getting an injection. So in addition to the pain of the needle itself, the fact that they don't know what's happening to them, you can't logic with them, right? That increases the amount of suffering. So when you grab an animal to inject something to them or take their blood, they don't know, from their perspective, there is this monster holding them, they don't know what you're doing to them. The reality of what happens to monkeys is that they're screaming in pain and agony. Think about the last time you got a paper cut or like a simple burn, how miserable you are, right? I literally just can't work. I'm like, oh, 5, But with animals, what we do to them, we consistently burn them, cut them, to do wound healing. We give them electric shock and like literally everything. think about the last person that you know who had cancer and how much they suffered throughout the whole process. So we induce cancer in mice like left and right. And for each study, we have to do to thousands of mice, right? So my point is, it's not 1 second of suffering. These animals are raised, and they literally, from the moment they're born, they're suffering in this pain, without painkillers, of course. And of course, when we show you bunnies, it's always, oh, cute bunny, and these photography setups. That's a reality. We pour laundry detergent and toothpaste and stuff in bunnies' eyes. And lastly, we feed laundry detergent to dogs and leave them to basically die in their own vomit and blood. And by the way, what we call this? We call this distress, or the animal is distressed. We don't tell you that we're killing animal, we say sacrifice. So we're using, just like humane and all these like marketing labeling, same thing here. And promoters of animal testing, they say, oh, but there are like laws protecting animals. I mean, yes, there is Animal Welfare Act, but all you have to realize is that it's a joke. It's like a clown, supposed to be funny, but at the same time, it's scary because it gives you this false sense of that there is some kind of law protecting the animals. In general, anywhere you see like humane, welfare, whatever, these are just meant for you to feel better about doing something horrible. So Animal Welfare Act, if you go to their website right there, it says that the definition of animal excludes birds, rats, mice, horses, and other farm animals altogether. And the tiny portion that is left protected, the protection is like really basic, like as long as you feed them or something like that. And even that is not properly enforced. So I can give you a lecture for 2 hours just about that. A misconception here is that animals are the last resort, and scientists try their best to not use them as much as possible. But the reality is that animals are nothing more than disposable lab equipment. So this is a pipette. It's a pipette tip. We go through thousands of these tips in every single experiment. And that's how animals are viewed as. So they're tested on, and then they're dumped. That easy. And the same way that sometimes we buy wrong pipette tips and we just toss them. Happens with animals. We buy wrong animals and we just toss them. So what you're seeing here is a gas chamber. So that's how we kill animals after the experiments are over. And scientists are people. Sometimes they're frustrated. Sometimes they have a breakup. It's Christmas Eve. They have to write a paper. They don't have time. They don't necessarily care about the animals. They turn the knob all the way up, the knob for CO2, because that's how we kill them. And immediately they go to acidosis and they literally burn from inside. So they're not the last resort. A lot of times, I've worked in places where they say, oh, in vitro test failed. Let's just test it in animals. Maybe we get lucky. So do diseases in animals even replicate what happens in humans? The answer is no. Why? Because a lot of diseases, especially chronic diseases in humans, happen over time, and they're progressive and degenerative. So when we forcefully give these diseases to animals, they don't replicate the reality. And because of that, animal results a lot of times are misleading, and they actually delay drug development. This is my favorite paper. It says, is it possible to overcome the issue with external validity with animal testing? And the answer is no. External validity is how generalizable is the results from one study to general population. And this immediately becomes a problem when you go from animal studies to humans. Even when every time you cross this species barrier, you run into external validity, and you can never solve this problem with animal testing. Why? Because every time you go to another species, you realize that every animal is physiologically, immunologically, biochemically, anatomically different. Let me show you how. A mouse has a tail, you probably don't. Imagine if we used dogs to assess safety of chocolate in humans. We would never have approved chocolate as safe for human consumption if we tested it on dogs or any other mammal. So why? Because we are biochemically different. That's me. That's banana. Promoters of animal testing say that, oh, we are genetically so identical, so similar with other animals. Me and a banana are 44% genetically identical. But can we all agree that I'm not 44% banana? Because the way that all these little differences in our genetic makeup is utilized, turns to proteins, makes the whole difference. Even mice and rats don't represent each other. They don't replicate each other. All the differences you see between chimpanzee, which is our closest relative, and Albert Einstein comes from less than 1% of difference in our DNA makeup and the way that the other 99% is utilized. Even amongst our own species, some of us don't react to certain drugs. Some of us are sensitive or have intolerances and all that, right? And we are genetically almost identical. So the question is, how can a rat or mouse then replicate what happens in humans? The answer is they can't. So to show you that, there is this famous clinical trial. You want to maybe take a picture of this because this is gold. So this trial is called Elephant Man Drug Trial. So what they did is they tested this drug, TGN 1412, in monkeys. They showed that it's 100% safe. Then they went 500 times less dosage to healthy volunteers, human volunteers. And minutes after injection of this drug, people started having major organ failure, extreme inflammation, and that's why this guy looked like an elephant, hence the Elephant Man Drug Trial. And this guy had so much inflammation in his fingers that they had to amputate his fingers. So testing on animals made us overconfident, and that led to this disaster. And it clearly shows that results from animal testings don't always translate to humans. So are there any benefits in animal testings? Yes, well, animals are complex models, but the complexity is good when it's human relevant. When it's not, it leads to false positive and false negative results. Also, promoters of animal testing a lot of times exaggerate the benefits and downplay the problems. And it's also really important to realize that a lot of benefits of animal testings were relevant to the past. So the same way that horses were relevant to transportation 100 years ago, today we fly, right? So can we agree that horses are no longer a valid solution for our current transportation needs, quality, and scale? So the same is true about animal testing, except that we've been using literally the same model for hundreds of years. What are the benefits of alternatives? They're faster, they're more accurate, they're cheaper, they're more human relevant, so that's the key. If you want to argue animal testing alternatives, they're more human relevant. And most importantly, they're safer for patients too. So it's important to realize that animal testing is not gold standard. And when we're talking about, people say, oh, alternatives are not 100% accurate. Well, neither is animal testing. But we already are in a place where we can be at least as good. Animal testing will never get better, but alternatives can get so much better. There is infinite potential to grow there. So I'm going to go through the next couple of slides kind of quickly, but I just want to show you that this is not sci-fi. We have this technology today, and I have used them. So instead of torturing mice to test inflammation, we can buy this kit here with human-relevant material in it, so it comes from humans, to test inflammation in vitro, in a lab, in a glass, right? Which one is perfect? Neither. That one is more complex, but it's not relevant to humans. But which one is faster? Which one is cheaper? Which one is more human relevant? This one. When we do in vitro testing, you can harvest the power of machines and robots. So you can do high throughput screening. This is something you can never do with animal testing. Instead of giving human tumors to mice and cure cancer in mice, you can actually take the tumor, chop it up into pieces, and grow these cells in culture, and I've done that. Then this is 100% human relevant. We have organoids. So organoids are tiny organs that we can grow from pretty much any organ in human body, and they represent the full organ to a degree. So instead of cutting through animals' heads and torturing them, we can use brain organoids. And this is from Texas Medical Center using mini brains to maximize research. This is from Columbia University. These are lung organoids, so new lung organoids in dish mimic features of full-size lung. So instead of shoving mice into tubes to force them inhale smoke, we can use lung organoids. We have the magical power of AI, supercomputers, machine learning, and all of that. So when I do drug design, let's say I have a target and I want to screen thousands of chemicals. There is no way to do that with animal testing. We just don't have the resources. But a computer can go look at the structure of every single key. It can look at the structure of my lock, and in a matter of hours or sometimes days, figure out which one works, something we can never do with animal testing. And once we have candidates, then we can do in vitro testing to show their efficacy. There's something called phase 0 clinical trials. That's microdosing. You're already familiar with it. When you buy a new lotion, you test it in the corner of your hand or something before covering your entire face with it, right? So same idea. If we actually did that for Elephant Man's clinical trial, we would never have had this catastrophe. There is human volunteers. So remember, every time we test a new drug in clinical trials, there is risk, even when it's tested on animals, right? Our job as scientists is to minimize this risk. And I want to tell you that animal testing is not the way to go, first of all. And second, sometimes we have volunteers. So I work in a pharmaceutical company. We developed a drug for stage 4 pancreatic cancer patients. These are patients who have 3 or 4 months to live. And the only way that you can test a new drug on them is if everything else fails them. So literally your drug that you have shown to be effective in a lab is their last option that can make, that's their last hope. But can we test them on them? No, because it has to go through animal testing and it takes 4 or 5 years. So you're killing people, you're taking this right away from them by not allowing them to take the drugs and going through animal testing. Then there is organs on chips. I'm sure all of you have heard of them. The beauty of this is that you can actually have multiple organs. So you can have a system on a chip. And this is what they look like in reality. And at the end, this is going to be the future of medicine. So we're going to have a patient on a chip and personalized medicine. Have you guys heard of personalized medicine? So if I have a cancer drug, it might work differently in different people. But let's say I have cancer. They can take my tumor in a lab. They can test which drug works on them. You're already familiar. You go to a doctor, you have cancer, and they give you a drug. They say, come back in two months. Let's see if you improved. Because they don't know if it's going to work. But I can take that tumor. I can test it in a lab. So that's personalized. That's for you. We know what is going to work in you. Again, patient on a chip or personalized medicine, this is going to be the future of medicine. And there's no animal experimentation involved. I'm almost done. But I want to say, why should we advocate for alternatives to animal testing? First of all, know that EPA, NIH, US Army, all of these organizations are stepping away from animal testing to a degree. And you already know that some of these alternatives are safer. So people who promote animal testing, they try to tell you that if you don't test on animals, you're not going to have a safe product. But do you guys buy like vegan toothpaste? Yeah. Right? When was the last time your teeth fell off because you were using? But they're not tested on animals, right? We know they're safe. Why is that? Because we have the technology that instead of pouring laundry detergent and toothpaste in rabbits' eyes, we can test it in vitro and be safer that way. So we can do the same thing with other fields. And lastly, when people insist that we should do animal testing, it's like insisting that we need to ride horses. Think about it for a second. In less than 100 years, we went from using horses for transportation to landing on the moon. Medicine 100 years ago, medicine today. Does that make any sense to you? I showed you all those supercomputers and everything, right? We are there technologically, but we are still testing on animals. So what can you do? Please support PCRM, PETA, SEEN, and other organizations that do amazing work. Sign their petitions, stay up to date, and ask your representatives, support the laws that protect animals. Speak up and educate others, and donate your time, skill, money, whatever you can. And also you can donate your careers. Even if you are studying computer sciences, biology, or whatever, you can make it about animals. And if you don't know how, come talk to us. And with that, I'm just going to say that I have a nonprofit, Allied Scholars for Animal Protection. We empower students in universities to do effective animal advocacy. And part of the thing that we do is also promoting alternatives to animal testing. So check us out. And if you have any questions, I'm here to help you. If you ever have any questions, we are all here to do anything that it takes so that together we can protect animals. Thank you so much. Thank you.